Good afternoon. We are the directors for today's first panel discussion focused on media and entertainment, titled Deepening the Ties Between the U.S. and China and Connecting the Two Markets.
Over the last few years, there has been significant growth in U.S.-China cross-border investment and collaboration in media and entertainment industry. Chinese companies have ambitions and interest in global exposure and are seeking opportunities for investment and impact in the U.S. Both markets are benefiting from increase in creative development, technology, innovation, and cultural exchange. Our panelists and moderator will share their deep understanding of current developments in the U.S.-China cross-border media and entertainment industry, as well as highlight their observations and predictions in the future areas of innovation, collaboration, possible challenges, and growth opportunities.
We are delighted to welcome the following distinguished speakers on this panel, which includes two UCI Anderson alumni, Stephen Hendry, class of 1997, Managing Director, Tang Media Partners. Marlin Prager, class of 2003, CFO of Legendary. Xiaoyong, CEO of Phoenix Satellite Television, US. This panel will be moderated by Mr. Joseph Calabrese. Mr. Calabrese is the chair of Latham and Watkins Entertainment, Sports, and Media Practice. He advises clients on the creation, operation, and the financing of entertainment and media companies, including negotiating complex distribution and licensing agreements, mergers and acquisitions, and structured finance transactions. Please join me and welcome our moderator and panelists for our first panel discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introductions for all of us, and welcome here this afternoon. Our panel topic is on a very currently interesting one, which is the deepening ties and connecting of markets between China and the United States in the film and entertainment business. As a lawyer who's been in this business for 35 years, we've watched many countries come to Hollywood, make investments in Hollywood, oftentimes decide they don't want to be here, go away. The Chinese market, however, has been one that has really had a lot of staying power, and I'm very, very happy to have these three distinguished panelists with us today. So why does it have staying power? That's a topic we'll talk about today, and where is it going? But where it is right now is a market that is adding screens at different reports say, but sometimes somewhere between 15 and 25 screens a day are being built and opened in China. Every projection is, at least by 2018, perhaps before, China will account for more theatrical box office receipts than any territory in the rest of the world. It'll surpass the United States. It's already number 2, having surpassed Japan. It's a country that has, in many ways, just blossomed as a market for U.S. companies, but also as an indigenous market. So if anyone has any questions about that, they could just look at the 60 Minutes segment. The news program 60 Minutes had a segment on the growth of the Chinese market just a couple weeks ago that actually mentioned Legendary as one of the examples of the deepening ties between the two countries. So with that, I thought I'll just do a quick introduction of the panelists. We'll get into our questions and answers. Steve Hendry is Managing Director of Tang Media Partners, as you said, which is a company that is dedicated to U.S.-China business initiatives across all types of entertainment product. I've known Steve for many years, and Steve had a distinguished career at MGM for 14 years, I think the last one being the Senior Executive Vice President at Television. Is that
correct?
That's it, yeah. Next to Steve is Xiaoyong Wu, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix North American Chinese Television Channel. Xiaoyong, you began your career as a reporter, so you're used to asking the questions, but I'm going to be asking him the questions today. I started as a reporter and a producer for Radio Beijing English service and continued to serve on as a correspondent news director, and has now ultimately founded this very exciting and large Chinese language television platform which broadcasts throughout the world and operates out of here in the United States and Hong Kong. Marlin Prager, another person I've known for many, many years, is the CFO at Legendary Pictures. Marlin has worked before that at Price Waterhouse and Houlihan Lokey, and he's worked predominantly with entertainment-related companies. Probably since your graduation from UCLA, you've had some involvement. And also before that worked for a few other companies in this space doing primarily financing. So a panel that certainly knows a great deal. At Legendary's request, we're not going to be talking about the Legendary deal, so if you have questions on that deal, you should save them for some other time. But the deal itself was very exciting, largest acquisition of a U.S. Entertainment company by a Chinese company in history. So exciting deal. So why don't I kick it off with just some general questions for the panel, which is largely, what are some of the opportunities and challenges that you're seeing integrating the Chinese and United States entertainment businesses? And I might pick on Steve since he's furthest away from me.
Sure. Happy to answer that one. Hello, everybody, and I apologize in advance. I'm feeling a little under the weather, but wanted to rally and be here at the WU conference I attended last year, and I think it's a great event. Yes, there are many challenges, but plenty of opportunities, which is the whole reason why Tang Media Partners was formed. We really started operations about a year ago. And when I look at the topic for this panel, that could be really our mission statement, deepening ties and bridging the gap and across the ocean, because we see a huge opportunity. And I think in my life, I've spent 20 years in the studio system, spending all of our time focused on Europe and Japan. And now I won't use the word pivot because that's more of a governmental term, but we're certainly, there's a lot of focus now on China for some of the reasons you'll hear Joe's talked about and you'll hear today. And the biggest challenges, I think, in building the bridges are cultural. I think both in terms of the content itself, and is there a way to bridge content, and should there be a way to bridge the way that content plays in both countries, but also in the business culture. The studios and U.S. businesses have had a way of doing things that's developed over a long period of time. Everybody who works in that system is familiar with it. Somebody coming from outside that system says, this is a very strange way to do business. Why are there so many lawyers? Why is everything so heavily negotiated? Why are we building in contingencies for what could possibly happen? Why don't we just make a deal and we're partners and move on? And I think from what I've learned to understand about the Chinese business culture, it's maybe a little different. But that's rapidly changing. I think the Chinese and their advisors are becoming quickly adept at doing business in the U.S., doing business with U.S. counterparties, and as a result, deals are getting done. The deal we can't talk about with Legendary, some of the other transactions that you've heard about in the news, and many more to come.
Thank you, Steve. Xiaoyong, you want to take a next cut at that?
Okay. What is the question? Anyway.
Opportunities and challenges. And
Okay.
Xiaoyong is really unique in this regard because he operates a business. Steve and Marlin and I tend to do more transactional matters. We do a deal and then we leave it to people like Xiaoyong to make sure it gets done and continues to operate. And so as an operator, what were some of the challenges?
Okay. I'm in the business for quite a long time, mainly as a journalist. In the media business, I think we do primarily three things. One is to inform. The second one is to educate. And the third one is to entertain. I guess that includes everything that we do. So I'm more concentrated on the inform, the news business. There are a lot of discussion about China, what China is doing, and how and why China could achieve what it did in the past 30 years. And there are so many panels that I also attended to. For example, there's one in Harvard University that's called China Forum, something like that. And people talk about why China could be successful. And if anybody who predict what China could achieve more than 30 years ago, everybody would regard that person as crazy. But China did achieve what it did, become the second largest economy in the world. I think, from my observation, of course, there are many, many reasons. I think the primary reason is that China has embarked on a road of marketization or commercialization of the whole economy. Market as a unique factor that is like an invisible hand that adjusts to the supply, to resources. It can determine what is good, what can survive, what can fail in the market. So China is basically switched from planned economy to market economy. That's a simple answer. And unfortunately, that procedure does not include media industry, or officially does not include. For example, after Spring Festival, which is the biggest holiday in China, President Xi Jinping visited CCTV. And CCTV threw out a big slogan saying that the media belong to the party. Actually, it has a surname called the party, which is totally wrong. This gives you some idea about where media is officially. But then in reality, there's a different story. Okay, I can go for a long time to explain that, but of course the media is not responsible to the party. The media is responsible to the people and the society. And that's why I think Phoenix has been very successful in the past 20 years. We are exactly 20 years old by now. Media is responsible to honor the truth, to be fair. I mean the news organization, well, as well as entertainment or something else. It cannot belong to the party. And it has to play by the rule of the market. That is, you have to produce products that is suitable to the market. That is, that there's a demand for this product, such as good news and good entertainment, healthy entertainment. So all the Chinese radio, television services in that country, on the one hand, they are still controlled by the government, has to say what the government tells them to say, or they are being prohibited to say a lot of things. There are actually 7 categories. And on the other hand, they have to do business in the market. None of the organizations or central television or local television is supported solely by government budget or government allocation of the money. Bo Xilai briefly tried to do that, and deciding the Chongqing TV should cancel all advertising sales. And the Chongqing government, municipal government, provides something like 300 million RMB yuan for Chongqing television every year, which is totally ridiculous. And this is trying to get China back to where it was back in the 70s or even 60s. So what I'm trying to say is the marketization is the trend that does not include Chinese media at the moment, but it is in it already, particularly with the cooperation between China and the United States in different areas, in movies, in television, in media education, journalism schools, and so on. It's irresistible. Nobody can pull us back to where we were. And I'm very optimistic about this trend.
Thank you. Just to summarize that, it's a market, but it's an imperfect market just right now. And it reminds me of my kids who were told they had to play classical music, but started playing rock and roll when they had the chance to. So that seems a bit like where we're headed. Marlin,
Yeah.
opportunities, challenges.
Yeah, I'm going to go without saying, or it goes without saying, clearly the way we do business, the financings, organizations, things of that nature, we're going to figure this out together. I almost take it for granted, but it will get done, and the fact that transactions are happening here is evidence of that. And I do think there's sort of a mutual understanding of the cultural differences, and the fact that deals get done clearly typify that or exemplify that. What is remarkable to me is the size of the Chinese market. And what is fascinating to me specifically is what content works there. What U.S. content. You think of Transformers doing $275 million in China, and Star Wars was significantly less, sort of the opposite trend here in the U.S. Well, why is that? I mean, both movies clearly a success. And there are movies that are relatively successful here, not necessarily in China. And so as we start to produce stuff together, there's going to be overlap. There's going to be things that will work in China, things that will work in the U.S., and it's going to be very interesting to look at that. The fact when I started Legendary in 2005, if you would have told me one of our movies would have done 100 million or 200 million or 300 million in China, I never would have thought that. And that speaks to how rapidly this market's evolved. And as Joe said, they probably will surpass the number of screens that we have here in the U.S. this year or next year. But what's remarkable about that, it's not a mature market yet, versus here in the U.S., our screens it is, for all intents and purposes, a mature market. So that it's got much more room to grow. In addition, we talk about theatrically and the consumption of movies in theaters, but there's also television, on demand, whether it's video. That market still has yet to evolve there. Someone was telling me the #1 most consumed show in China is House of Cards, which I find remarkable. I never would have guessed that in 100 years. So again, you don't know what content of ours they're going to like or vice versa. But there clearly is content that we mutually like, and there's a lot to learn. And it's incredibly exciting. Very excited to see how it evolves over the next several years. And I will say this, the one thing I was telling some people this yesterday, what I particularly like about entertainment media, it's one of probably the few, if not the only industry, I think that in most industries, things are somewhat secretive, even as we're making mutual investments in countries or in Chinese companies and vice versa. What's great about this industry, it's like, how do you make movies? Well, let me show you. Here you go. Like, there's no secrets. There's nothing to hide. We want to figure it out together. It's not about the computers. It's not about the tech. It's really about the people and the ability to tell stories. And the fact that you can tell a story that cultures can connect to, or that two different cultures can connect to, is pretty remarkable. And so we're going to figure that out over the next several years on multiple fronts.
Thanks, Marlin. I might shift it a bit to questions about motivations and common pitfalls. Hollywood has always survived on other people's money. That's just what this town does. So they're obviously welcoming when the Chinese first came to invest. Now they've come to own. And the question I have is, we know what the motivation is on this side. What are you seeing as the moving factors, the motivating factors for the acquisition of companies in the United States? Is it economic? Is it cultural? Really a follow-on to that would be, where are the most common misunderstandings between the two cultures in deal making?
I'll be happy to start again. So I got to speak about the challenges, but to me the most interesting thing is the opportunity, and I think this plays into this. So Joe, the rest of us have lived up here through there was the Japanese wave, then the German wave, and what's different about this wave is that I read it, it's called co-petition, which is a cooperation through competition. And as we know, there's a real need for capital here in the U.S. The U.S. and European markets are mature and not growing. We've got this huge growth market in China, and we have capital in China that is interested in deploying into the US media. So there's a real opportunity for a win-win. And what's different about some of the other foreign waves of money is that I think this will last because there's a real strategic element. And I think from the experience that we've had working with Chinese strategic partners, there's a few things. There's certainly diversification of investment in geography, currency, and so on. There's the element that in their own territory, the entertainment industry is high growth, whereas other markets may not be. I think as a country, China would like to develop a rival to Hollywood, its own Hollywood, that would create content that would rival what we're doing here in the US as the leading producer of content. And to do that, they want to learn from the best. And so the strategic element is the deals that we're doing. They include elements like a board seat, observation. They really want to understand the development process, the production process, the distribution process. What is it about the US industry that makes it the giant that it is? And quite honestly, a lot of that has to do with the creative process, which is a much more intangible thing and not something you can just replicate. And then the final strategic element is the Chinese distribution rights themselves. And again, this is a win-win because, at least as it currently stands, I think better monetization of content can happen in China through a Chinese partner than for a US company trying to make inroads themselves. So when you put those things together, to me that's the huge opportunity, and it's also then competition that I think will be lasting, not just some money that's tax motivated or other motivations. And so I think this is here to stay and just going to continue to grow.
Thanks, Steve. Before I go to Xiaoyong, I just want to, for those of you who don't know this, there are strict import quotas in China for films that don't qualify as Chinese-produced movies. And there are also worse economics for the movies that don't qualify. So flat license fees. The box office typically works on a percentage of gross receipts. That's not available to you if you don't fit the quota, or if you're not a Chinese film. This has led to intense negotiating at international trade levels, but is getting better, but still isn't all the way there. So Steve's reference to better economics has got a lot to do with qualifying your movies as Chinese movies. Xiaoyong.
Yeah, I would like to mention one important factor, that is the mentality of Chinese investors or business people in the media industry in particular. There's, of course, making money is important, but making money seems to be the only goal of many of the Chinese investors or media industry people, leaders. Look at the Chinese box office wonderfuls. There's a movie called Lost in Thailand, and then there's one called Lost in Hong Kong. And those are ridiculous movies. And they were so cheaply done, produced, and the plot is so naive, and but they reap a lot of money. Why? This is a serious question. So you have to look at who is going to theaters to look at to watch movies, to see movies. And unlike the American market has more than the 30-year-old people or older generation. They go to movies, they spend money. But China is a different story. But anyway, the Chinese entrepreneurs or industry leaders in the media business, they are too much interested in making money, or even with some not so glorious objectives, to launder money or something like that. So they forgot their mission to produce good content. That's the problem the American partners should be very aware of. Or some people want to take advantage of that. That's okay, but be careful about the final result.
Thank you. Marlin.
It's, we spend a lot of time speculating what's the motivation of others. For me, it's what I spoke about previously. It's you do look at the huge growth in the Chinese box office, and that hasn't factored in the other ancillary markets that are likely to grow as well. I do believe, and they also see the opportunity there with the success of American movies in China. And I think there is what I feel is, a genuine wanting to be able to make big movies and export them to the rest of the world and have the rest of the world consume, I don't want to say Chinese movies, but movies that are made through in cooperation, co-production type things. So they want to be a player in making movies. It's for worldwide consumption. And, and I think this is their entree into that. And, there are a few early successes to point to, like, Kung Fu Panda. But again, this is one of those things we're going to evaluate iteratively as we go out over the next 5-10 years.
Thanks. So it's a combination of profit. It's a building their own indigenous industry. Do you think there's a cultural aspect to this? Do you think that there's a soft power concept that has been enunciated, at least, by the Chinese government?
I do believe they want to export culture. They do want the world to see them on the grand stage like the Olympics, which they did a fantastic job with.
And we'll have a chance to do again.
Yeah.
In 2022.
But the Chinese government has a wrong concept of how to get people to know Chinese culture or be interested in Chinese culture. I have another panel in Washington, D.C. that's about media and the United States and China. China literally spends billions of dollars every year trying to do something to help the world understand China. But the product is wrong, the method is wrong, and the channel for distribution is totally wrong.
Okay. Did they get anything right?
China is not alone. Just give you one example. United States is the most mature, the largest media market in the world. It has 100 million television homes. And more than 80% of the people watch television through what they call pay TV. You pay for cable, satellite, or whatever. And those homes, when you turn on the TV, you have at least 200 channels. And the average American, for example, somebody in Wisconsin or Iowa, they watch maximum 10 channels in a week. And then there's some players in this market, foreigners, trying to reach that guy in Tennessee or in anywhere with their own channel, namely BBC, USA, Today's Russia, CCTV English, and then there's Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera, of course, declared bankruptcy or they stopped working. This is totally wrong. Look at BBC, China Central Television. BBC is probably faring a little bit better. In this business, you have to solve 3 problems. Number 1, that people can see you. You must be able to provide your channel on cable networks, satellite, or whatever. Number 2, when people can see you, they actually do see you, do choose your channel. Number 3 is that they watch you today, they may watch you again next week or tomorrow or maybe next month. And all these questions, for the average American, no way. No way, nobody in his right mind would turn on a foreigner-produced English channel in this country. This is the reality. If you don't see this reality, you don't come up with the right product or the right method to reach them.
Well, thank you. I want to provide some time. We have a few minutes left for questions. And does anyone have a question?
Thank you for giving this such a good talk. And I just have one quick question for the two gentlemen in the media and the entertainment industry. And we haven't really talked much about the self-censorship that U.S. movie industry have been doing to cope with China's restrictions. So it talked in 60 Minutes, and I'm just wondering, do you see, how this self-censorship thing going on in long run gonna affect, I will see the U.S. film production industry, and also is there a better way to work around that?
I'm going to leave that to the people who make the content. So,
Yeah, I'll speak to it briefly, and I can speak it from my point of view. Fortunately for Legendary, our type of movies are known as fanboy type movies, big event tentpoles. And we don't find ourselves in a situation, ours don't generally have political themes or aren't trying to push an agenda or things of that nature. For us, our films have been well received and we've never had to deal with these censorship type issues. I know other people have spoken about it, but it's something I can't speak firsthand about.
And it certainly plays into the cultural difference that I spoke of earlier. I think what I've seen in some of the deals, particularly where it might be across a slate of pictures, is that the Chinese investor will have the opportunity to opt out of something that might be deemed culturally sensitive, for example. And so that's one way of working around it. I think in general, other than, we'll call them genre movies that are predominantly for the US, your horror, urban, slasher, some of these types of films, the studios are recognizing this global audience and focusing a lot of time and attention at creating things that are acceptable and reach an audience worldwide, including China.
Yeah, it's more like a business decision. For example, if you go to a market, it's happened to be Muslim market, you try to sell something they don't eat, you're out of the business, okay? Phoenix, as a television service inside China, we face this kind of problem every day. We try our best to maintain or retain our integrity. For example, topics like the Cultural Revolution, the people who were sent off, the young people who were sent off to rural areas during the Cultural Revolution, or the issue of so-called rightists. Those are topics that the CCTV cannot touch, but we talk them at great length about what really happened, who started the Cultural Revolution, who suffered, how many famous people committed suicide, and why, and so on. We do this all the time. We are not CCTV, we are not licensed by CCTV or central government. Of course, we receive warnings. They say, okay, if you continue to do this, you'll be kicked out of the market. We don't want to get kicked out of the market because then we cannot survive. So we do things that is needed by the market and also approved by the government too. Believe me, China is on the market, on the road moving toward the market. Like Joe was saying, that China is going full steam ahead toward capitalism, but it still have to say it's socialism. It's something that we try to encourage the trend, but at the same time you don't want to kick yourself out of the market. Let's put it this way. Of course, it's frustrating. As for the Americans, some people, some Hollywood people seem to be working on a mission rather than as business people or serious entertainment people. They have strong belief. That's okay. But if the belief is so strong and it reflects in your product, then the product cannot go into the market. That's it. It may or may not have the problem of censorship. And by the way, it's not China controls what goes into the country. Many other countries do that too, like France or European countries. You can hardly imagine a movie, American movie, played in France in English or original English language. You have to adapt them, not just subtitle. In China, you can you can see all the American movies in English traditional soundtrack and with subtitle. Or some of them they dub them because they are so popular, like Panda 3. So U.S. is probably the only country that you can see anything. You can start any channel in this country. Al Jazeera, okay. Or if you try to start a KKK channel, maybe you can do that too.
It's called the First Amendment.
Yes.
We're a country of
So don't use that concept to explain everything outside this country. Okay.
Thank you. Thank my panelists. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your conference.